Candace Owens crossed a line few people ever dare to approach. She didn't hint. She didn't suggest. She stepped into the spotlight, aimed straight at Meghan Markle's tightly guarded pregnancy narrative, and voiced what millions had only murmured in private. Something was wrong. Not because of personal dislike. Not for spectacle. But because, she said, she noticed something larger taking shape, a repeating pattern hidden beneath royal gloss. A story refined so carefully that scrutiny was never meant to touch it. Then came the twist no one saw coming. According to Candace, a voice from inside Portland Hospital, someone who actually lived through the kind of medical experience Meghan described, finally spoke. Quietly, cautiously, truthfully. And what that insider revealed didn't merely weaken the official version. It detonated it. In an instant, Archie's birth stopped being a tender royal memory and became a narrative filled with broken timelines, missing medical logic, and choices that clash with real hospital procedure. That collision, Meghan's version versus the insider's reality, is where this investigation truly begins. And it starts with a single sentence spoken by Harry himself. In his memoir, Spare, Harry recounts Archie's birth with one brief line that now sits at the heart of the controversy. Meghan had 2 epidurals, and they were back home within 2 hours of delivery. On the page, it seems insignificant. But to medical professionals, that sentence landed like a shockwave. Because for it to be true, Meghan would have had to give birth, recover from anesthesia, receive full medical clearance, and exit the hospital almost instantly. And here's where the story collapses. The drive from Portland Hospital to Frogmore Cottage alone takes close to an hour. Which means every other step, delivery, post-birth care, monitoring, paperwork, discharge, would need to fit into the remaining 60 minutes. That isn't fast. It isn't rare. It's impossible. No doctor approves that timeline. Not after an epidural, and certainly not after 2, a claim that already contradicts basic medical practice. Harry's timeline doesn't stretch. It snaps. And that fracture pulls us deeper into the mystery. Before medicine even enters the picture, geography raises the alarm. Portland Hospital sits in the heart of London. Frogmore Cottage rests miles away on the Windsor estate. Even with perfect traffic, police escorts, and cleared roads, the trip takes nearly an hour. Often more. So when Harry insists they were home within 2 hours of Archie's birth, the math turns dangerous. It exposes the illusion. Like a puzzle piece forced into the wrong space, the edges don't align. That's the birth timeline. It doesn't merely feel awkward, it outright refuses to fit. This single inconsistency opens the door to every other question. Because if the travel time alone fails, what else collapses once the spotlight turns on? And as we move forward, that spotlight intensifies. The fractures widen. The fairy tale Meghan presented begins to unravel thread by thread. When people picture Portland Hospital, they imagine chandeliers, gourmet meals, rose petal calm, and celebrity mothers glowing in pastel suites. And yes, the hospital is stunning. Private. Elite. Designed for comfort and discretion. But beneath that luxury lies a rigid medical framework the public rarely sees. Portland Hospital has no emergency room. No trauma bay. No full-scale emergency department like a major NHS hospital. Instead, it operates with specialized units, a NICU for vulnerable infants, and enhanced care for high-risk mothers. These units can stabilize patients, not handle every crisis. When complications escalate, patients are transferred. That matters. Because the fairy tale birth Meghan described candles, tubs, serenity, clashes with a facility built around preparedness and protocol. Portland is elegant, but it has limits. It does not cut corners. It does not rush recovery. So when the official story describes instant epidurals, immediate recovery, and a 2-hour exit, it contradicts how the hospital actually functions. The hospital's real structure becomes the first quiet signal that something doesn't belong. Then we reach the medical core of the story. The 2 epidurals. To most people, that sounds harmless. More pain relief, why not? But that's not how epidurals work. An epidural isn't a pair of injections. It's a catheter placed into the spine, delivering medication through a single system. You don't receive another epidural. You receive an adjustment. For Meghan to have had 2, the first catheter would have needed to be fully removed and a second inserted during labor, an event so rare it usually signals failure or complication. And if that happened, it would be documented, not glossed over. Yet Harry's account describes a smooth, effortless process. No delays. No concerns. No corrections. Doctors don't call that unusual. They call it wrong. And when this detail collapses, it suggests the story isn't just incomplete, it may be engineered. Which brings us to the next contradiction, the setting itself. Harry painted the delivery room as a sanctuary. Warm water. A birthing ball. Candlelight. A spa-like calm. It sounds idyllic, but it clashes with Meghan's medical profile. At the time of Archie's birth, Meghan was in her late 30s. In medicine, that's labeled a geriatric pregnancy, not as an insult, but as a risk category. Patients in that group are monitored more closely, not placed in dim lighting or tubs where visibility is reduced. High-risk births require bright lights, constant vitals, immediate access to equipment, not cinematic serenity. So why does the official version read like a wellness brochure instead of a medical environment? If blood pressure risks were present, the room should have looked clinical, not curated. Once again, fantasy and reality refuse to align. And that conflict becomes critical when the story reaches its most dangerous chapter, preeclampsia. The moment preeclampsia enters the discussion, everything changes. This isn't a mild complication. It's a life-threatening condition tied to extreme blood pressure, capable of triggering seizures, strokes, organ failure, even death. Harry's account implies Meghan experienced symptoms. But what makes this claim alarming is the insider's first-hand experience at the same hospital years earlier. Her blood pressure surged to 230/130, numbers that can kill. Doctors immediately administered magnesium sulfate, a harsh treatment that drains the body and immobilizes the patient. She wasn't walking around. She wasn't relaxing. She wasn't surrounded by candles. She was monitored hourly and kept under strict supervision because leaving early could have meant a seizure. Now compare that to Meghan's story: smooth delivery, 2 epidurals, home within hours, global travel shortly after. These realities cannot coexist. If preeclampsia were truly involved, Portland Hospital would have responded with the same severity. Celebrity status doesn't change protocol. They don't gamble with blood pressure. They don't release patients at risk of collapse. The insider's ordeal becomes a mirror reflecting how implausible Meghan's timeline appears. The more you understand preeclampsia, the more Harry's version resembles a fairy tale counting on no one checking the facts. After Archie's birth, the narrative drifts even further into disbelief. Within weeks, a time when most women are still recovering, Meghan and Harry were everywhere. Abbeys, Italy, Paris, New York, Toronto. One appearance after another. Flight after flight. And here's the crucial point. If preeclampsia was real, this wasn't just uncomfortable, it was dangerous. Recovery demands rest, monitoring, stability. Not airports. Not long-haul flights. Not packed schedules and late nights. Even uncomplicated births require caution. But Meghan's calendar looked like a victory tour, not a recovery period. On its own, this doesn't prove anything, but combined with every earlier inconsistency, it adds pressure. It reveals a pattern, a story floating far above physical reality. And when timelines accelerate unnaturally, the cracks multiply. Step back, and a strange silence emerges between the lines of Meghan's pregnancy narrative. The silence of facts that don't align. Of timelines folding inward. Of medicine refusing to bend to myth. The candles. The tub. The epidurals. The tower exit. The global travel. The wrong doctor. The elevator that never existed. Piece by piece, the fairy tale erodes. What remains looks nothing like the pristine version sold to the public. And that's what matters most. Childbirth is raw, private, vulnerable. It doesn't need polish. It doesn't need choreography. But when the same story is told 3, 4, 5 different ways, the fractures become impossible to ignore. Beneath the surface, another version whispers from insiders, from doctors, from contradictions that refuse to disappear. Something doesn't add up. Something was reshaped, softened, rewritten. And if these are only the cracks already visible, what happens when the rest of the truth steps into the light? Because this isn't the end of the Meghan Markle questions. It's the opening chapter of something much larger. Something deeper than anyone expected. And when the remaining pieces surface, the fairy tale won't simply fracture. It will collapse.